Well, let's get this party started. Hello, I'm Father Timothy Matkin, and welcome to Matins, episode number 4, about Birettas, cake, and ordination. We'll see how that goes. Just check to make sure we're streaming on Facebook and YouTube. We'll also have this on our feed on Spotify and Apple Podcast. I chose the subject matter because on Friday, which is tomorrow, I'm celebrating my 20th anniversary of ordination to the priesthood. And I'm making a cake. I wanted to do this for 20 years because when I got married, I asked for the groom's cake to be a biretta because, ordinand, deacon at the time, and I thought, what a perfect groom's cake, because it'd be chocolate. It seems like every groom's cake I've ever seen is chocolate, and then the other one is vanilla or white or something. And so I got this look from the lady in the kitchen at the seminary, like, you want what? I don't know, but she did a beautiful job, amazing job. And I mean, it's fairly simple. I don't know why it's intimidating, but it's basically you're talking about a chocolate cake that's a square, and then I think she probably used cookies or something like that. But you make these half-circle blades or fins on top, and some kind of poof in the middle, and boom, you got yourself a biretta cake. It should be fairly simple. I'm hoping it is. We'll see. We'll see how it turns out, and maybe just a big pile of brown. By the time it's all done. But who knows? At least it'll taste good. So I've never done this before, but I've wanted to do it for 20 years. And I didn't realize until just the other day, after I've already gotten stuff, that there is black fondant. I don't think that's what she used back then for the wedding reception, but I think it was just chocolate. But maybe if I do this again for 25th anniversary, I'll try the fondant. It seems a bit unappetizing for some reason. Black cake, but tastes good, I'm sure. So no, I'm just going to use chocolate, kind of that fudge version of chocolate, so it's just a little bit darker for the frosting. And then for the blades, I've got some almond bark and made that into half circles, and so hopefully that'll be the right consistency, so it's not too thin that it'll break and not too heavy that it'll just fall down. And then for the center, basically I have some Hostess cupcakes. My wife keeps referring to them as ho-hos, but they're actually not ho-hos. Ho-hos are a little smaller. These are a little bit larger. That's why they're called cupcakes. So now you know the distinction, the technical distinction between ho-hos and cupcakes, even when they're from the same bakery. So I thought I'd put that in the center. I could put two of them together, just kind of glue them together, and then do some, little spots of frosting around the outside to make it look like a palm. For those of you who don't know what a biretta is, it's basically a clergy hat. And it's one of those that's kind of an outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace, of orthodoxy. And that's kind of the strange thing in both Anglican circles and Catholic circles, that it's not foolproof, but it tends to be the case that only conservative Orthodox clergy anymore will wear a biretta. Probably more the case in Roman Catholic circles than in Anglican circles. But that's a pretty good indicator. It's not perfect, but it is pretty good. Every now and then you'll see a liberal don a biretta, but that's, for whatever reason, it seems to be few and far in between. For those of you who don't know, it's basically an academic cap, and pretty much all academic gear is church gear. That's how it started out. So remember, the universities were church institutions. They were all run by monks. They were all for training the clergy and for other specialities that were arising in the Middle Ages, like law and medicine, basically. And pretty much all hats really have a kind of common origin. You have a soft, sort of formless and shapeless hat that's just kind of there. And then it begins to sort of, over time, evolve into different shapes as it's kind of used and handled differently. So, for example, the Canterbury cap is probably closest to the original version of this hat, where it has stayed soft. Now, some Canterbury caps will be kind of folded and creased and sewn so that they start to have the beginnings of a mortarboard. And the mortarboard is basically the same hat. It's just gotten stiff on the top in a kind of decorative style, probably because that's where it would be pinched to be removed. And then for whatever reason in Europe, particularly in Italy, it developed into blades, basically fins around the side. So for those of you who are watching online, you can see this example where you got these three fins on the top. And that's basically where you grab onto them and take it on and off. So you can do it on the side. For some reason, there's one on the back, even though nobody would ever grab it from the back. But there's not one on the left side of the wearer, except for a doctoral biretta, which, for whatever reason, has 4 blades. Maybe there were more left-handed doctors. I don't know. And so basically, it became stylized over time. And so the soft cap developed into the Canterbury cap, developed into the mortarboard, developed into the biretta. And there are different forms of the biretta. We mentioned the doctoral biretta, which has 4 blades, typically, but it depends on the institution, the university. It'll be in the color of the university, and it will have, well, I forget if the hat itself is in the color of the degree or the color of the university. But it's sort of like the hood, where part of it is representative of the degree and part of it is representative of the school. So I forget on the hat which is which, if the trim represents the school or the degree, and whether the color of the hat represents the school or the degree. Also, it would be in different materials. So it might be in silk, might be in velvet. It just depends upon the school. My sister graduated with a doctorate in physical therapy, and she went to a Catholic university in Kansas City, and I was trying to convince her to get the doctoral biretta, but she ended up, because they had a choice. They could either do the mortarboard or they could do the biretta. And so I'm like, get the biretta. You know, nobody has the biretta. And but she ended up choosing the mortarboard. But I wonder what it would look like if you know, what colors it would be and what material it would be and so on. I haven't seen one from there. This biretta is from House of Hansen in Chicago. And this thing is the sturdiest biretta I've come across. I mean, it's built like a tank. Pretty close second would be the ones from Almy, although they're a little bit less solid than this. This one also has, it's kind of hard to see, but it does have piping around the edge. I forget whether that was kind of came standard or if that was an add-on. It doesn't really show up because it's black. If I were to be a canon or something and have a red trim, I don't think I would go for the piping. For some reason, that just kind of looks odd to me. But the palm would be red. For an ordinary cleric, it would be black. For a seminarian, there would be no palm. And there's a lot of variations. So, for example, the different ordination colleges in Rome have different, basically different habits, I guess you'd say, different cassocks with different styles and trims and colors. And it's really fascinating to see all of these because the seminarians are all decorated differently. And then when they become just regular old clergy, it's all back to just solid black. with no trim or anything. The tuft on the top is made of silk, and it's a palm or pom-pom. And the one from House of Hansen went flat. And I don't think that particular outfit makes the palm well. I think that's more of a old world expertise. But there's basically and you can kind of see it on this one. This is a foldable biretta for those looking online. There's a ring around, and once that ring slips down below the center of gravity, the whole thing just falls apart. And that ended up happening to this. But I found a replacement, because I was looking for one to order to replace, and suppliers wouldn't want to do that. They would sell you a new hat, but nobody was selling replacement palms, even though you think there would be a market for that. But no, they'd rather sell you a new hat, which is these days well over $100. I think I got all of mine for under $100. Thank goodness, back in the day. But I was in, what's that? I think it's a Japanese store. Now I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, or maybe it's from Hong Kong. Anyway, I was just in there one day, and I came across a couple of hats, and there was one with this palm on the top. I'm like, that'd be perfect. It's the right size, it's the right shape, it's the right color, it has the right look to it. And so I just cut it off and stitched it onto this one, and I'm good to go for another 100,000 miles. This other one I got from Leaflet Missile. So this is the one with the dangling palm. And it is a foldable biretta. So you can get them either sturdy or foldable. So I wanted to have one of each. And this one is held up pretty well. It's starting to kind of lose its ability to stand on its own once it's unfolded, because it's been folded and unfolded too many times to have the original dexterity, the original what have you. So basically you unfold it, and it will be like that. And then it was originally just attached by a string, but it tended to not quite sit upright. So what I did is I removed that, and I got one of those kind of bungee cord cords and put it through there, put it through the hole, and on the bottom, I don't know what you call those things, but it's like the little slip knot mechanism type thing, so you can tighten it so it'll stay up solid. And I remember Father Martin Yost talking about, he got the exact same thing, and he said how his little kids like to play with the silk palm that was on the top, and I thought that was really sweet. I think Father Jason Catania also said that his cat would like to do the same, but his cat would do more damage than the child. Also, I looked in front of my closet, this old one, which I had made. I forget exactly. It must have been back in seminary, because I do remember it must have been pretty early, too. Maybe it was before seminary. I remember at the liturgy of the first exam. I wish I had a picture of that. But that was a case at Nashotah House when the new students were taking their first exam. The upperclassmen would come in and say a little prayer and spread around some very noxious incense. There was probably like wet leaves or something. And they would all be dressed up in the oddest things they could find. So what I did is I found an academic hood, and I went out and bought some curtains, some lace curtains. And so I just kind of cut it out and stapled it together and made a surplice entirely of lace. And then I had already had this hat, and I didn't have a palm. I've been looking for years for a palm to put on that. If there were two hats with the palm that I used for this one, then I would have gotten a second one and put it on here. This one's a little smaller, by the way. And actually, it's probably the most comfortable because it's the most light of all the ones that I have. And it just feels nice. And it's pretty sturdy. I don't remember what I used to make this. I think it might be plastic panels from like a office folder material, those plastic folders. Anyway, so I took this hat and I got some artificial flowers, a big plume of daisies or something, and I just stuck that in the hole. And so I had this plume of flowers in the middle as a palm on my biretta, and I was beautiful. And like I said, I wish I had a picture of that. Let me read the entry from Donald Atwater's Catholic Dictionary on Birettas. It says, a square cap with 3 ridges on the top, sometimes a tuft in the middle. Oh, and by the way, it's supposed to be a palm. It's not supposed to be like a tassel. But I've noticed that Whipple, and I think Watts, and maybe this is just an English thing, they make it like a tassel, and it's incorrect. But maybe, that's our unique Anglican patrimony or something. Any case, it is worn by all Western clergy except monks and friars, excluding conventual Franciscans, of all ranks on entering and leaving the church for service, and at certain times during those services, during the singing of the psalms in the divine office, for example. The color is black, but that of cardinals is red. And in fact, in the consistory, where the Pope makes new cardinals, and they receive the red hat is, at least nowadays, it's the biretta. It might have used to be the glero, that big one that looks like Saturn, with a big, huge brim and the big tassels on it. The ones that are hung up in the ceiling from the cathedral. And it says that, or the legend is that as it slowly deteriorates and falls from the ceiling after many years, that is an indication that the cardinal has departed purgatory to enter bliss of the beatific vision. So the color is black for clergy, that of cardinals is red, of bishops purple, and of Premonstratensian, that's so hard to say, canons, and Cistercians, white. And Norbertines were white. Maybe that's what the first word is about. The biretta is also worn at times by regulars who are prelates, by an abbot assisting at a ceremony in prelatial dress. Its use is not exclusively liturgical. It originated in the soft round cap to which the ridges were added to facilitate putting it on and off. And so there are a couple of other variations. So as I mentioned before, if you're a canon, generally speaking, you have a red tuft and red piping sometimes. That's sort of optional. Different canons, different chapters of canons have their own insignia. And I think in the New World, we never really caught on to this. So it's been always kind of arbitrary and, just pick something up from the church goods supplier that everybody else has. But in Europe, you'll see different canons, different chapters of different cathedrals will have their own particular outfits. So it'll vary from chapter to chapter. Some will be very ordinary, some will be very dramatic and very interesting. Also, some cathedral chapters, the canons wear pontifical vestments. So they'll wear mitres and even, I think, have croziers sometimes, which is very a little over the top. And you can see why Paul VI kind of did away with a lot of those things. You don't see them really as much anymore, but some places are still entitled to them, I believe. And you see them, if you go to New Liturgical Movement and search for pictures there, you'll search canon or canons, and you'll see pictures of very interesting dress for canons. Basically, if you're a Monsignor, my lord, you're a minor prelate, and you're either a prelate of honor or a chaplain of His Holiness. Maybe that's the same thing. Anyway, there's two different hats. So one will have a purple tuft and one will have a red tuft. And then also I think the red tufts are worn by the judiciary in the papal court. There's also some different kind of variations in the size and shape. It seems like the Polish biretta tends to be very, very tall. And I'm not sure if there's another place where they might be pretty short. But it seems like I've seen some short ones, and I don't know if they're from a particular place. The Spanish biretta has kind of become fashionable, and I don't have one of those. A couple of my friends have a Spanish biretta. And rather than fins, it kind of like dips down in waves between the points, and the points, the corners, come out to a point, and almost like a sharp point. You know, you poke an eye out with one of those things, and so you just grab it from the point. So as you can see, different variations kind of come from different ways of handling it, whether you're pinching it on the top to take it off, whether you're pinching it from the top in the middle or the side, or whether you're pinching it from the corner like that. It developed into different styles. Let's see. So we covered academic birettas. Oh, here we have on Wikipedia, they mention different colors of different degrees. So it says the color of the doctoral biretta given by ecclesiastical universities and faculties is normally black with colored piping corresponding to the faculty of study in which the degree was granted. So I remember that one of the professors at Nashotah House, when I started there, had just gotten his doctorate from Marquette. And so he wore his biretta at the academic convocation that we had. And I remember it was black, and it had, I think, maybe blue piping, I forget. And then it had a red tuft on it because it was in theology. And so the tuft in the center indicates the degree. So theology is red, canon law is green. Oh, and there's also not a religious order, but a religious society. And it's not Knights of Malta, it's something else. Anyway, I remember they wear green trim on their cassocks, piping and buttons, and green tufts on their birettas. Philosophy is blue. PhD, maybe his was blue, I forget. Social sciences, orange. It says at one time, different universities had different practices concerning color and style of the biretta itself. One author, nearly a century ago, reports that in his day, the Roman universities gave a doctoral biretta in black silk. Louvain gave a biretta with a colored tuft according to the academic discipline in which the doctorate was awarded. The Catholic University of America gave a velvet biretta with a red tuft and trim to doctors of theology. The traditional biretta at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas, or the Angelicum, is white, to correspond with the white Dominican habit. It makes sense. Also, the Academic Senate of the Angelicum, in its May 2011 meeting, indicated that the black biretta may be used with trim and palm in the color of the particular faculty. A three-peaked black biretta with appropriately colored piping may be similarly used by those receiving the licentiate degree. Well, we are pretty much out of time. I want to close with, because I forgot to open with, the prayer that we normally use. So this will be the collect from the 2019 prayer book for morning prayer for Monday. I don't think we used that before. If we did, oh well. But it's a wonderful one. And it goes like this. Let us pray. O God, the King eternal, whose light divideth the day from the night, and turneth the shadow of death into the morning, drive far from us all wrong desires, incline our hearts to keep thy law, and guide our feet into the way of peace, that having done thy will with cheerfulness while during the day, we may, when night cometh, rejoice to give thee thanks. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Well, again, my 20th anniversary of ordination will be tomorrow, September 23rd, the Feast of St. Linus, and we will have a high mass for the Feast of St. Linus, which I've never been able to do before, and I've been looking forward to it ever since I found out, after I was ordained, that on the old calendar it's the Feast of St. Linus, who was the Bishop of Rome that followed Pope Peter. And so if you're able to join us, if you're local and you can come out in person, please join us. It'll be at 6:30 in the evening, Friday, September 23rd, 2022, at St. Francis Anglican Church in Dallas. And we will probably see you next Tuesday. Until then, God bless.